All right, so this video, guys, is going to get it all started. We know that our main character right now of all of our power countries has been England, and this is kind of where we're heading. And I know you guys are excited to find out why the colonists got angrier and angrier and angrier. And I know you're super pumped to learn about the Revolutionary War and how the colonists beat England, even when they had no army, and how our country came to be born. But before we can get to that, we do need to figure out exactly how England came to claim all 13 of their colonies. We've already talked about the first two, Virginia and Massachusetts, but we're going to cover the rest of them a little bit differently. So here are the 13 colonies, and instead of going one by one by one, the first colony, the second, then the third, and the fourth, that would take all day. Instead, we're going to learn about the colonies chunk by chunk by chunk, or region by region by region. There are three different regions of colonies: the New England colonies here to the north. We have then the middle colonies, are the ones in the middle, very clever name there. And then down in the south, we have the southern colonies. So we are going to go region by region by region. And we are going to start with the New England colonies. And when we learn about a region, we are going to learn about two things. One, why those colonies came to be formed in the first place, why people started those colonies, and also what life would have been like if you lived back then in that region. And we're going to go region by region by region, starting with the New England colonies. We'll do the same thing for the middle colonies, why the middle colonies were formed and what life would have been like if you lived there. And then we'll end with the southern colonies in the same way. So we are going to start with the New England colonies, and we're going to start with why these colonies were formed in the first place. And there's actually three reasons. There's actually four colonies total, but there's three reasons why the New England colonies were formed. And you're going to be expected to memorize these three reasons. And one of the ways that I'm going to help you to memorize them is to take these three reasons and have them go along with a little chant that is similar to a chant you already know. You guys have probably, hopefully, heard of the movie The Wizard of Oz. And in The Wizard of Oz, there's a song or a chant that goes, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. And we're going to do the same thing to help us to remember these three reasons why the New England colonies were formed. So we are going to learn them as lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Now, please know that they were not formed because of lions and tigers and bears. We're going to replace those words in the chant with the actual words that you need to memorize. So let's go ahead and get started, because with the New England colonies, it did all start with the colony of Massachusetts. So let's bring us back to what we already know. We know that England's very first colony was Virginia. But Virginia was a southern colony. We're going to talk about that later. And we know it started with Jamestown. And we know with Jamestown, 105 men and boys came looking for gold. And the colonists were so focused on finding gold that they didn't bother to prepare for winter, and half of them died. But then John Smith came in and made the rule, no work, no eat. And they eventually got help from Native Americans to learn how to grow tobacco, which was as valuable as gold. And because Virginia became a place for colonists to get rich by growing tobacco, more and more colonists moved from England to settle in Virginia, including the people aboard the Mayflower, the Pilgrims. If you remember, they were originally headed for Virginia, but unfortunately, they never made it there. They got blown off course by a terrible storm, and that was how we formed the second colony, that is Massachusetts, and it all started with Plymouth. And so if you remember this story, the Pilgrims arrived in Plymouth, Massachusetts in 1620. We had 101 men, women, and children who left England, and some of them wanted to separate from the Church of England. and find a place where they had the freedom to practice their own religion. They wanted freedom of religion. And because they wanted to separate from the Church of England, we call them separatists. Unfortunately, even though they tried to do things right, half died the first winter, but they did get help from Native Americans, specifically Squanto, and were able to survive. And they eventually had a huge celebration to give thanks, and that became known as the first Thanksgiving. And so that was kind of how people in England figured out, hey, if you want freedom of religion, there's a place you can go. It's called Massachusetts. And so in 1630, another group of people left England and headed to Massachusetts. Now, they did not want to separate from the Church of England. They still wanted to belong to the Church of England, but they wanted a more pure form of this church. They felt like the King of England was using the church to benefit himself, that he was using the church to get rich and follow his own agenda. So these people believed in the Church of England, but wanted a more pure form of this church. And so we call these people Puritans because they wanted a more pure form. And Puritans flocked to Massachusetts because they too wanted the freedom to follow religion their own way. And so many Puritan villages erupted throughout the colony of Massachusetts. And so we are ready to fill in our notes for the first time. Anywhere you see this slide with the picture and the pencil, you'll know that you're going to need to get your booklet because you're going to need to be filling in some notes. So open it up to where it says New England Colonies. And you're going to find this section of why colonists came to the New England colonies. Think lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. The very first reason, the lions, is religion. So you're going to take your pencil and fill in the word religion. And what that means is Massachusetts was formed because people moved there to get religious freedom, the freedom to practice a religion that they chose in the way that they chose to do it. So if you need more time to write it, you can always pause the video, but please fill in the word religion. So instead of lions and tigers and bears, oh my, it is now religion and tigers and bears, oh my. All right. Now, these Puritans that moved to Massachusetts so they could follow a more pure form of the church, for them, religion was extremely important to them. And they expected the people who lived in their Puritan villages to follow their Puritan beliefs and follow their Puritan rules. And they were pretty strict about it. They basically said, hey, if you're willing to follow Puritan rules and religious beliefs, then you can stay in the Puritan village. But if you don't follow the Puritan rules and religious beliefs, well, get out. And that is actually how the colony of Connecticut came to be formed. It all started in 1636 when a gentleman by the name of Reverend Thomas Hooker was living in a Massachusetts Puritan village. And he ended up leaving this Puritan village because he didn't like being forced to follow the Puritan rules and laws. Now, another word for rules and laws is politics. And so he believed that the Puritan politics were all wrong. In a Puritan village, there were leaders that determined the rules and laws for everybody else to follow. He didn't like those politics. He thought that the laws should be based on what the people want, not just what on the leaders want. And so he decided it was time for him to leave this Puritan village in Massachusetts and find a place where people had more political freedom, the freedom to follow their own rules and laws. And so you're going to open your notes again because we are now ready to figure out the second reason why New England colonies were formed. And that was simply our tigers, which is politics. So go ahead and write the word politics in there. And what we mean by that is political freedom. the freedom to make rules and decisions and laws in a way that they want to, instead of the way that others want to. And so now we have both our lions and our tigers. Instead of lions and tigers and bears, oh my, we now have religion and politics and bears, oh my. Religion and politics and bears, oh my. Religion and politics and bears, oh my. All right. So now we know that Massachusetts was started because people wanted religious freedom. Connecticut was started because people wanted political freedom. And that is actually also why the colony of Rhode Island was started. Rhode Island was started because of this guy. His name was Roger Williams, and he did not agree with the Puritan rules and laws. And so he also wanted political freedom. But he let everyone in his village know, I don't agree with your rules and laws. And so they made him leave. So he bought some land nearby from some Native Americans. And together with this lady, Anne Marbury Hutchinson, she was actually kicked out of her Puritan village because she let them know, hey, I don't agree with your religious beliefs. And so together they started the colony of Rhode Island, all because they wanted both political freedom and religious freedom from the Puritan villages. And so the colony of Rhode Island was started because of both a need for religious freedom and political freedom. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Religion and politics and bears, oh my. The only thing we don't know yet is the bears. Let's figure this one out. And the bears is what's going to be connected with the colony of New Hampshire. Now, New Hampshire became a colony in the year 1680. And if you've ever gone to New Hampshire, you would learn that New Hampshire is filled with trees. And when you cut trees down, you get lumber. And so New Hampshire was formed strictly for business reasons, for money. They decided that if the king would start the colony of New Hampshire, he would have a way to get lumber and he would send that lumber back to England and sell it and make lots of money. Lumber was very valuable. And so, since New Hampshire was full of trees, the king started the colony of New Hampshire for money, for business, and that was the lumber. And so, in our notes, we're going to add our final reason, and that's our bears reason, and that is simply business. The colony of New Hampshire was strictly started so that the king could make money by selling that lumber. And so our 4 New England colonies, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Little Guy, Rhode Island, they were started for those 3 reasons: lions and tigers and bears, oh my. Religion and politics and business, oh my. Religion and politics and business, oh my. Now, we know we have our lions and tigers and bears, religion and politics and business. Oh my. Not only are you going to need to know why the New England colonies were formed, you're also going to need to know where each one of them are. So you'll be practicing labeling the New England colonies. But we're also in the next video going to learn about what your life would have been like if you lived in a New England colony back during this time period called the colonial times. So that will be the purpose of your next video, is to learn about, okay, we now know why people started these colonies, but what would your life have been like if you lived there?